Valentine's Day is fabulous. This is the 15th episode of the 4th season of The Golden Girls. It's directed by Terry Hughes, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. It wasn't the strongest start, and initially I wasn't sure if I'd like it, because it's one of those episodes where the girls are sitting around the table telling stories and we get the flashbacks. And sometimes they can work really well, sometimes not. And with this one, apart from the first story, which was fine, but I didn't love it, it was actually really, really great. So they all have dates, but their dates all cancel or they have plans that don't follow through. So they're all sitting around deciding to tell stories of other terrible Valentine's Days or Valentine's Days that maybe didn't go according to plan. And at the beginning, Blanche gets a phone call from her date. Obviously know that her date is cancelled, but listen to somebody's reaction in the audience. She says on the phone, "I spent all day getting ready," and somebody in the audience, everybody laughs, but the first thing we hear is somebody just giving a little deep chuckle as if to say, yeah, right. Just their reaction just intensified the comedy of that moment. I rather enjoyed it quite a lot. And then we get the first story, Sophia and Salvador, and they have car trouble, and it had its sweet moments. It definitely had some really sweet moments, but I didn't think it was that interesting. It was fine, but not that great. And there's a tiny mystery. And as I said, there are spoilers here, so I'll say what the mystery is, of course. Dorothy says to Rose, "We remember what you did to us last Valentine's Day." And we have a couple of minutes of wondering what Rose could have possibly done to Blanche and Dorothy. Well, they booked a vacation at a resort. Rose booked it, and she didn't realize it was a clothing optional resort. So they want to leave because they're uncomfortable. But then they realize, let's just go for it. And initially, I thought they were just going to resort with their clothes on, but not being bothered by the people who choose to take their clothes off. No, they took their clothing off. And the reveal is brilliant as they come down the stairs with, I think, either a bed sheet or a shower curtain, I'm not entirely sure. And probably a bed sheet because a shower curtain would probably be a bit translucent. But they then end up with these 3 giant display hearts, which I just thought was absolutely fantastic. I really wanted to put it as the thumbnail for this, but I try and avoid spoiling the funny moments too much until people know it's a spoiler discussion. But I really found that to be very entertaining. And they're going to the restaurant, they're going to be confident, they drop the hearts, and it's, well, everybody's wearing their clothes because they got dressed for dinner. I didn't expect it to go in that direction, and I thought it was very, very funny. Sophia then says she with Julio Iglesias. Nobody believes her, but we'll come back to that in a little bit. We then have a brief story with Blanche, and it seemed like it was quite heavy and emotional, but it was okay. Every year she goes to this restaurant where her husband proposed to her, and even after her husband died, she still goes there. And she meets a young man there who's also planning on proposing to somebody, and she offers to give him some tips, and he agrees a little reluctantly to begin with, but he agrees. As soon as he said some relationships are different, or not all relationships are the same, I didn't write it down, but something to that effect, I kind of knew immediately what would happen next. Blanche gave the advice, and then his male date came in, and I kind of saw that coming, but it worked well, and Blanche's reaction was not too bad either. She didn't make a big deal out of it, which I quite liked. And then we have, well, I was going to say my favourite story, but I don't know, because the clothing optional resort one was very funny as well. But in this one, they're all going on a cruise, and they go into this store and they decide to buy protection, condoms. And Blanche isn't bothered. She picks them up. She goes to the till, to the cashier, and she's not bothered. And then Dorothy does it a little bit nervously, and Rose very sheepishly does it. And then the cashier calls out over the tannoy that they need more, and they are mortified. And then, well, Blanche isn't. And she takes the microphone and she speaks over the tannoy, and she says this beautiful speech, a short speech, but she says this quote, and I love it. She said, "We're going to walk out of here today with our heads held high, secure in the knowledge that what we have done is morally and socially responsible." And she had this beautiful smile on her face, and everybody cheered, and it was a fabulous moment. I absolutely loved it. And then we end back in present day, and there's a knock at the door. Briefly, I thought it was Sophia's date. It's not. It's Blanche, Rose, and Dorothy's dates, because this was planned all along. Sophia had arranged for all of their dates to cancel, which seems kind of cruel, but I guess the element of surprise was very nice. And they all cancelled, and then they all surprised them, and it was a sweet thing to do, but I also feel like I would absolutely hate that. Also, because if somebody cancelled their date on me, the very first thing I would do is take off my nice clothing, get into some comfortable, scruffy clothing, take my makeup off, and mourn my sorrows in front of some television show or something. So I would really not want them to then turn up at the door. So, very sweet, but don't ever do that to me, please. And then, of course, they go out for their dates, and there's a knock at the kitchen door. And, of course, it's Julio Iglesias. And I feel like that was kind of obvious. I didn't look at the cast list before watching this, which I'm glad about, because I would have seen their dates were in it, and that would have been a bit of a spoiler. But yeah, I kind of figured Julio Iglesias would turn up, and it was a really lovely moment. So I really thoroughly enjoyed this. I wasn't expecting to. Well, whenever there's a flashback-based episode in Golden Girls, sometimes they're amazing. Sometimes there's at least a couple of weak stories, but apart from Sophia's story at the beginning, which was fine, but not that entertaining, the rest of it was just absolutely brilliant. Personal highlights would be the three of them behind the giant red hearts, and the scene and how it played out in the store with the tannoy. I absolutely loved that. And I guess the reveal of the 3 dates, because I hadn't expected it, I thought that was very well done as well. So needless to say, I thought Valentine's Day was a really brilliant episode of The Golden Girls. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. Definitely one that I think is worth watching.